Missouri State Highway Patrol, a division of the Department of Public Safety. News release. Emphasis. Bonne Terre, Missouri man arrested in connection to 1989 homicide. The Missouri State Highway Patrol's Division of Drug and Crime Control announces the arrest of Wesley P. Marler, 69, of Bonne Terre, Missouri. Marler was arrested on August 30th, 2024 in connection to the 1989 death of Jimmie Wade Martin of Bonne Terre, Missouri. The investigation, which led to Marler's arrest, was conducted by investigators with the Missouri State Highway Patrol's Division of Drug and Crime Control and the St. Francis County Sheriff's Office. On October 14th, 1989, Jimmie Wade Martin was found mortally wounded in front of a residence located in Bonne Terre, Missouri. Martin was later pronounced deceased from his injuries at a Farmington, Missouri hospital. In December of 2020, members of the Missouri State Highway Patrol's Division of Drug and Crime Control, along with St. Francis County Sheriff's Office, began a review of the investigation into Martin's death. After an exhaustive investigation, the case was presented to St. Francis County Prosecuting Attorney and the Missouri Attorney General's Office. On August 22, 2024, a St. Francis County grand jury indicted Marler with one count of assault in the first degree. On August 30th, 2024, a warrant was issued for Marler's arrest. Marler was located the same day and taken into custody by the Missouri State Highway Patrol and the St. Francis County Sheriff's Office. Marler was transported to the St. Francis County Jail, where he is being held with a $500,000 bond. The above charges are mere accusations and are not evidence of guilt. Evidence in support of these charges must be presented before a court of competent jurisdiction whose duty is to determine guilt or innocence. October, Friday the 13th, 1989. Jimmie Wade Martin's body was found on a street in the small town of Bonne Terre, Missouri. When there are witnesses, a murder weapon, and a taped confession, how exactly does a murder become a cold case?
It started at that little bar.
This case is not ended by any stretch of the imagination.
A lot of people in that town's not going to talk.
Rumor has it was
Big brawl, big bar fight.
County Jail.
We have been working so hard on this.
I can't be silent anymore. You know that
Guy that got killed here last night.
There was rumors going around like the next
We
day.
started doing a lot with Facebook.
the question is, what happened to Jimmie Wade Martin?
From BlueBurnProductions, this is Small Town Forgotten. I'm your host, Chris Hulsey. Thank you for listening. If you're returning to this story, thank you for keeping the faith. If this is your first episode of Small Town Forgotten, thank you for joining us. But maybe pause and listen to the first 13 episodes first. We have not had an episode since October of 2023, almost a year ago. While we were silent, we, including the twins, were working with the Missouri State Highway Patrol, St. Francis County Prosecuting Attorney, and the Missouri Attorney General's Office. And last Friday, we finally achieved the goal that we have been working towards, an arrest. If the press release isn't clear to you, I'll state it plainly. Wesley Marler, the man that we feel is responsible for the murder of Jimmie Wade Martin, was arrested. A St. Francis County grand jury indicted him, determining that there was enough evidence that there was probable cause for him to go to trial. He is in jail this very minute. His bond is set at $500,000. As next of kin of the victim, the twins received the news from the Assistant Attorney General's office, and afterward, they called us. Here's that conversation a day later from getting the news. It's 35 years, 4 years of Small Town Forgotten, and yesterday was a huge day. I mean, you got the call that we've been waiting for and that you guys have been waiting for years. So talk me through that. Who called you and what did they say and how did you feel? Go ahead.
Kevin Zoner, the Assistant Attorney General's office, called and basically told us that there was an arrest and that it happened this morning. And some of it I feel like is kind of almost like gaps are missing because I can't really remember everything because I think I was still like almost in disbelief. But I mean, I was hearing it, so obviously, it was believable. But it was just like, I don't know. I think my emotions were so all over the place when we were talking to him, and he did say, you might have questions later, and to call because he's like, I'm sure you guys will think of, oh, I should have asked him this, and basically, I said, where do we go from here? And I think he said he'll have a court date. And
there'll be an arraignment or some sort.
Yeah. And
they're thinking Tuesday with the holiday.
Yeah. And then also
told us to bond him out.
Yeah, which was $500,000.
Yeah, $500,000.
I would feel kind of almost cheated if he was able to bail out right away. Kind of like once again, it's excitement followed by kind of a disappointment. I don't feel like it's always like that because we have got some exciting, news, and it's not directly negative after that, but it seems like the big things that we get really excited about is when it kind of, hits. But
that $500,000 bond, cash only bond, that's pretty stiff. So
yeah, he also said that he was there would be a victim's advocate reach out to us to walk us through like the process, and he said there's going to be some things that we do that you may not like or understand. There's going to be some things that we may question.
Yeah. I told him that once we got a phone in about 20 minutes, I'm going to call him back just to make sure I just heard everything. I don't know. My mind was kind of all over the place. And like, once we got off the phone, my whole body shook for 4 hours. And I called Angela and I'm like, I can't quit shaking my legs, my arms, my hands. She's like, me too. It was just a weird, just feelings all over the place. I wanted to cry. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream,
And I kept like replaying, like I'm kind of I've been lost in my thoughts of like just replaying like how we got here and
it's been a long road.
Yeah, all the ups, all the downs, and just the support that we have had has been indescribable, really.
Yeah.
We went from having nobody to I have a hard time going by words, really, from people because I think we've been let down so much. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, whenever really nothing was done in the beginning. And I think we're at a point to where, like the people that we're working with, we know that they have good intentions. And I almost feel like they want that Small Town Forgotten, Donnie Crump, Andy Wood, Mal Zollner,
Nat Wampler.
Yeah, and
people we may not even know about.
And the relationships that we have built over the last couple of years. And I just think of all the people that has played such a big part in this.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't really trust people's words. I trust their actions. And just because I think we've been let down so much. And it's almost like, everything that Donnie said he was going to do, he did. And I'm like putting my trust in.
It was a leap of faith to trust because you have been let down before. And you guys have held off just since Small Town Forgotten. We've been waiting for 4 years, and I'm sure for you all that you felt like it's going to be another letdown. Like this is just people that are saying they're going to do something and just delaying and nothing happens. And then for it to all come through like this is, it vindicates all the patience and the trust and the faith that we had in them.
Yeah, and I finally feel like, I feel like we passed the baton, and the case is in good hands.
Yeah, definitely. So the podcast started, was it October of 2020?
Yeah, October we announced it, and then I think the first episode was November of 2020.
Okay. So in August of that year, I had went to it wasn't Melissa. It was Melissa Gillum's office, but I didn't speak to her. I spoke to the St. Francis County investigator, and I brought my book, and I was like so pumped about it. And then I got an email saying it was outside their scope, and we had just went and visit David White, and it was just kind of ironic that Sean had called about wanting to get involved in, starting the podcast and everything. And at that point, I felt kind of like it was kind of a low point, because that was, I thought was, okay, this could, go somewhere if the St. Francis County investigators, will look into it. And I didn't really understand why it was outside their scope, but, Sean called and we started talking, and then in the meantime, we met David White, and it was kind of like Small Town Forgotten, and you and Sean, Vanessa, Ashton, all that was such uplifting moment. And I felt like at that point, whenever everybody changed their Facebook profile to my dad's picture, that was a very uplifting moment too, because it's like, I felt like sometimes in my darkest times, there was, goodness and blessings that came out of that. Definitely.
Had the arrest already been made when he called, or was he letting you know that it was happening that day? Or do you know?
It had already been made. Yeah. That was the first thing he said was, we made an arrest this morning. Yeah. And I don't know what I heard after that, really. Yeah, me neither. And then I go, wait a minute. Now, when was he arrested again? And then I had to have him repeat a few things, because I couldn't tell you what he said.
So you guys get off the phone with him, what do? You turn around and start making phone calls? Who was your first call?
Mine was Chad, my husband. And then we called my mom, my mom's sister, and my grandma, who actually just turned 84, who has like always been like our rock. Yeah, our whole life, So they just started like screaming, all three of them. Yeah.
Oh,
they were like,
awesome.
oh my gosh, and and my mom, I talked to her a few minutes later, I think, and she was like, I can't quit pacing. She was just like pacing through. I was pacing too. Yes. Yeah. And then we called you and Sean.
Yeah, when I got that call, I think I was walking out of the bike store, or walking in the grocery store or something with my son, and I didn't even know who all was on the line. I just kept hearing more voices. I thought it was just Sean calling me. And then someone else would say something, and I'm like, what's going on? We made an arrest. I'm like, what?
We were anxious to tell my dad's sisters too. Yeah, so we got them all on a call. And with my mom. My mom said like 3 times, don't forget to call me before you talk to them, because she wanted to be on the line too.
So could you go to sleep last night? Did you sleep like babies, or did you just lay awake thinking about it?
I didn't sleep very well at all. I slept probably the best I've ever slept in a long time. Really? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it was just like, it almost was like a weight was lifted, I kind of feel like. And I think I felt emotionally drained. I felt physically drained. Yesterday was it's all kind of a blur, really.
Yeah. I mean, what a whirlwind of a day. So we're a day out now. I mean, we've kind of made the decision as Small Town Forgotten to stay quiet until there is a press release. I think that you guys said that you were too, but but today being a day out, I mean, is it sinking in yet, or does it still feel not real?
It's starting to sink in. I think so, yeah. 1 minute, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like over the moon. Over the moon. And then the next, I get really emotional. I feel like I'm 11, like with my emotions. And then I can't, my mind will not stop racing. And I'll be Like I'm like, do I laugh? Do I cry? Like, I just have so many emotions. They're all over the place. Yeah. And I just got random messages all day from people I haven't talked to in a long time. Like, and that's the first question they ask, is it true? I'm like, yes. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy for you girls. And it's just, another confirmation of how much support we have.
It's been such a huge part of your lives for so long that, and now at this point, it's kind of like your work is done. There's nothing else to be done. There's going to be a trial, and your work is finished. There's no more people to call. It's almost like a season of your life has passed. Does it feel like you guys think that after this trial you're going to be able to move on?
We have some ideas just about, I know we talked to you and Sean last night about, presenting a bill.
Yeah, talk about that if you don't mind.
I'm addicted to true crime. I think I watch every Dateline episode that has ever been aired. And you see so many families going through what we are going through. And I think we are just, not that we have an advantage, I don't want to use that term, but we have each other. And there's twins have like this special bond. And, we talked about whenever Andy is okay, I'm having a breakdown. And whenever I'm okay, she's having her breakdown. And it's like we build each other up. And I just feel like we couldn't have done it without each other.
No, because there's times that I knew I would never give up, but there was times that I'm like, basically is justice ever going to be served? Because it's like something good happens and then you wait and wait and wait. Then something good happens and you have to wait and wait and wait. And then you get devastating news and you get tired of being patient.
Yeah. And, we have each other to pick each other back up. And I couldn't imagine someone trying to do it alone. It would be easy to give up. You watch all these Datelines and all these crime shows, and it's so hard for families to get the job done. Without, you can't get any of the case file. You can't get any information whatsoever. You feel like you're the one that cares the most, but you're the most that's left in the dark. Yeah. And I feel like if we would have gotten this paperwork, the case file, years ago, then I don't think a person will ever understand unless they've gone through it. You're there. Like, it's just undescribable. And you feel helpless. And because obviously it's your loved one and you feel like you're just another number in the investigation. Yeah. And, we'll get to it if we got time today. Yeah. Oh, no, I ain't got time today or tomorrow or next year or next year. Yeah. You call and call and call and nobody will call you back. No, you actually have evidence. And nobody will even pick it up. Yeah. And we're not, that was before. That was in the early stages. Yeah. And we feel like if there was a law that you could get the case file like a certain amount of time, because it had been 20 years that nobody had looked at this investigation. But it was an active, it's not solved, so it's considered active. And so they will not give you the case file. I had to go through the sunshine law request and I was denied. And I'm like, why? If they're not working on it, at least give it to a loved one that they can invest all the time they want, and of course you're going to do that for your loved one. But I could understand too, where some families might be a little harder to deal with but if they want to try it on their own, then more power to you. That shouldn't be active if it's not really active.
That sounds awesome. So,
what I
go
say is
ahead.
now since we feel like, okay, it's in good hands now, it's been kind of nice not to be, I would get home sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. Whenever being here. And it was such a big part of our lives.
Oh,
yeah,
I
and
know. The amount of work you guys put in has been incredible. And that's what's kept us going this whole time, is seeing the work that you guys were willing to put in.
But yeah, we definitely want to hopefully have a Jimmie's Law, to where
families are entitled to that paperwork, I feel like.
Case file after a certain amount of time.
Yes.
If it's not being worked.
Yeah.
What's considered not being worked, I don't know.
Really cool. So there's going to be a trial coming up. What's your hopes for that?
Oh, I think not for the trial, but prior to the trial, I am hoping that people that have been silent because of fear, that the person that they have been scared of is not capable of revenge, retaliation, or whatever people are scared of, will now come forward.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know there's people out there that know things that they have been too afraid to come forward with.
And I hope that when he lays his head at night to sleep, that he is reminded that there is consequences of killing someone. And he's lucky that you guys didn't, help us a long time ago, because it would have been, it wouldn't be almost 35 years. I made a vow to my dad, we will never give up, and we will fight like someone just killed our dad, because that's what happened. And they got away with it.
Well, you did it. You guys did it. So
I feel like it takes two, and I feel like he was the only one that paid the price. But now, I feel like, you do the crime, you do the time. Whenever we first got the case file, Angela came over, and there was a part in there that I read that I got real nauseous, and I all of a sudden got really hot, and I think it was snowing out. And
Yes.
I told Angela, I said, I got to go outside, and I just felt like I was going to pass her. And she's like, are you okay? And I just started throwing up, and it physically made me sick to read some of that stuff. And during the trial, I don't know how it would go, but I just hope and pray that we can find out what truly happened.
People look at us as victims. We're not the only victim. David White's a victim.
My dad's sisters, his parents,
and
so many.
I hope that whenever he's sitting there in that jail cell, he took my dad away from us, from his family. Now, his family, and I have no ill will toward his family. I'm not saying that, but what it's like to be taken away from your family. Yeah.
Well, you guys haven't said it yet, so I'm going to go ahead and say it. Do you have anything to say to Wesley Marler or the Marler family?
I'm just going to pray for him.
And I just want the truth. We have our theories. Yeah, and I remember, I think it was some kind of review on the podcast where someone said, oh, they just want fame. Fame? I don't want to cry in front of people, but when it comes to this, you can't help it. That's your loved one, the person that made you laugh every day, the person that you never get to see again, and you didn't even get a chance to tell them goodbye. Yeah. We were supposed to go with them the next day. I think, Chris, you said in there something in one of the podcasts, you said something about our family's heartache for entertainment. And you're like, but if that's what get us there, yeah, I don't think right now, I don't know what I would say to Wesley. You put us through freaking hell. At least tell us what you did to Mom. Yes.
Tell the truth.
Tell the truth. But he's lived it for so long. Or is he that type of person that it didn't bother him that much? I don't know. I could speculate a lot, and I could have a lot of ill will, but I just pray he tells the truth. We couldn't have done it without you guys. Yeah, Small Town Forgotten has been the biggest blessing. And I love how the Martins stick together. Yep.
Well, it's been a heck of a ride. 4 years. A lot of patience.
Yeah. I don't know. I've through this whole process, been very blessed. I've met people just from this that needed to tell me something, and we became friends, and it's we've just been blessed with everybody that has helped us. Jimmie's Army is, we call it, got a lot of support. And we appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys have a lot of support. The way you guys have worked together in this, I think everybody sees how incredible it is.
And it's because of people like you and Sean,
Vanessa,
Ashton, yes, the Assistant Attorney General, Kevin Zollner, Lieutenant Donnie Crump has been nothing but amazing. Corporal Andy Woods with the Highway Patrol, Matt Wampler with the Sheriff's Department, and all the listeners. People have come forward. People have helped us put the pieces of the puzzle together that we are missing. And that's why we were able to get it done, is because of little bits of information here, little bits of information there. A lot of people has put a lot of work, dedication. I mean, look at all the times you and Sean have taken away from the family to work the podcast, to go to
and
the
it's something that you
scene.
guys don't get paid for.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
No.
Try not to. Let it out.
No, we definitely, I mean, after the phone hung up, after we got off the phone, I put my phone down and I said to myself, actually, I think I said it out loud, I've been waiting 34 years for that call. And we did it.
Yes, you did. That's a powerful phone call.
I dreamed about this day for so long. It's weird. It is. It's a definitely most emotional roller coaster. I don't know if it was Aunt Jean, Aunt Dana, or Aunt Dodie yesterday. I know your dad is so proud of you guys. I was like, imagine a party that Heaven's having. My grandma and grandpa, my dad, just there. And one of my dad, I can't remember which sister it was, said something about, your grandparents and your dad are like, that's my girls. Yeah. Yep.
It'll be interesting to see how this trial plays out.
But, it's nice to have, if I ever call Donnie, I'm so used to hearing from 2007 until, 2020. Yeah, somebody will call you back, and you wait, and you wait, and you call again, and you wait, and you wait. How about, this is Angela, and I'm calling to check up on Doug's murder case, and they said, what's your last name? And I said, Williams, and they go, we've never had anybody murdered by the name of Williams. That was one response I got. Yeah, stuff like that. So it's nice to actually be like, hey, Donnie, I have a question for you or whatever, and, get a call back, like, an hour later, I'm like, wow, like,
absolutely.
It may not seem like a lot to some, but it is,
Absolutely. He's been a blessing for sure.
Oh, you know what we didn't talk about? David
What you
White's reaction. Oh my God.
Oh
Yeah,
gosh. Yeah. Digging that. So you talked to David White, and his reaction was,
every emotion that I felt like that I went through that day all came out in him. I think. Yes.
yeah, he probably feels vindicated as well.
You know what? I think you're exactly right. I had gone through some things last year where I guess I was a part of a smear campaign. Whenever things are said about you that are not true and you face people, I don't think I've ever really had to deal with that. You can only imagine what he felt like. Yeah.
Sure.
Of a murder. And for his reaction was just, it was priceless. Yeah, it was.
On the phone right now. You need to hear this. It's important. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, girls.
Andy?
They arrested Wesley this morning.
What? Are you kidding me? Yeah! 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 Oh my God! Yeah! Oh yeah! Hang on.
Hello, podcast listener. Hope you're enjoying this episode of Small Town Forgotten. When you're ready for a break from the true crime genre, come join us over on Mostly Superheroes, a weekly pursuit for the world's best stories with an emphasis on live-action superhero stuff. I'm your host, Logan. Join me, PC Mike, The Giggler, Scotty Scoop, and Carrie for a breakdown of all the TV and movies happening each week. Find us at mostlysuperheroes.com and listen where you get your podcasts. Watch us on YouTube and Facebook, and enjoy the rest of the show.
There are a couple of points on the press release that should be explained. First, if you've been paying close attention, you may be wondering about the other suspect. If you'll remember, we were always given two names. The other individual's name is Scott Kennan. Back in 2021, both Wesley and Scott were arrested, but no charges were filed by the then St. Francis County prosecuting attorney, Melissa Gilliam. Scott Kennan, who is Wesley's brother-in-law, died last summer from cancer. I never had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Kennan, but we have sources who have told us that to the end, Mr. Kennan maintained that Wesley beat Jimmie Wade Martin to death. Second, the grand jury. Maybe, like me, you did not know what a grand jury does. Well, they are people, registered voters, who are gathered to determine whether or not there is probable cause to believe that a person committed a specific federal offense. Essentially, the St. Francis County prosecuting attorney, Blake Dudley, laid out the case against Wesley Marler, and the grand jury determined that there was sufficient evidence to go to a trial. While it was happening, the grand jury was a secret. Nobody outside of the proceedings even knew that it was happening, and it happened in one day on August 22nd. I get the impression that both Blake Dudley and the Missouri State Attorney General wanted to vet the charges through a grand jury to validate moving forward. It is, after all, a 35-year-old cold case, and I can understand the need to be extra cautious. Third, the charges are first degree or attempt at serious physical injury. We believe that Wesley intended to kill Jimmie Wade, that it was premeditated. We have witnesses, besides what you've heard on the podcast, that say that he had said his intentions before Jimmie Wade was murdered. In Missouri, the statute for this charge reads that the suspect, quote, attempts to kill or knowingly causes or attempts to cause serious physical injury to another person, end quote. First degree is the highest degree and is a felony crime in Missouri. I'll be honest with you and say that we were disappointed with this charge. However, we think that it's this charge because it's not clear if Wesley was the only one who hit Jimmie Wade, and they're making sure that he will not be freed on a technicality. For example, what if it can't be proven who did the actual blow that killed him? That could easily turn into reasonable doubt. Regardless, this charge carries with it a penalty of 10 to 30 years, and Mr. Marler is 69 years old. But none of us are legal experts. Wesley and Scott have been referenced in almost every episode of this podcast, and you just didn't know it. In our first episode, I read the police report written on October 14th, 1989. It stated that 3 men were chasing David Brian White. We believe, based on witness accounts, that those 3 men were Jimmie Wade Martin, Scott Kennan, and Wesley Marler.
At or about 11 a.m., Sergeant Mallow, Sheriff Cade, and this reporting officer interviewed a witness to the incident. Stated that the 3 men were chasing another man toward Mound Street. The man being chased, she stated, looked like a person she had known from Potosi years ago, David White.
In episode 2, in the police's interview with David Brian White, David says that he stopped 2 guys from beating on someone. We believe those men were Wesley Marler and Scott Kennan, and that Wesley was beating on Shane Hill. Scott was the man who had a baseball bat.
And they just kept beating the crap out of him, beating on him and beating on him, and he was all curled up in the street, and he kept telling them, you know, I do not want to do this anymore. So I stopped, told them that he had enough and leave him alone. Stop. And I kept telling them, so they all came after me. 3 of them did. I took off running, and the one that was second, you know, the one second to last one, they were like running like a trail of 3. And the last one turned around, and the other 2 kept chasing me just because I asked them to stop, man. I was scared. One guy had a baseball bat or something like, and I asked Mr. Goldsmith last night if they found it. They kept coming and chasing me, and there was a stick in these people's yard or driveway or something.
In episode 3, part 2, Jimmie Wade's sister, Dodie, talked about the verbal altercation that Jimmie Wade had with Wesley in the bar and how Wesley knocked on her parents' door to tell them that Jimmie was hurt and then was later seen at the hospital.
What were the rumors going around that you had heard?
That Jim Wade got in a fight with Wesley Marler. We didn't know who to believe anymore. I was in my front yard, and somebody had knocked on my mom and dad's front door and told them that Jim Wade was hurt and that he was at the hospital. And I do know who that person is, but someone missing her name. They were beating on my mom and dad's front door. I went in the front door and they were beating on it.
So did you all go to the hospital?
Yes. Me and mom and dad went to the hospital. And there were several people there at the hospital, his friends.
Do you remember who was there at the hospital?
Yeah. Do you want me to say who was there?
Who was it? I'm sorry.
I can tell you some of the people that were there.
I would love to know who was there at the hospital that night.
I know Wesley Marler was there. Carol Marler was there. She was the one beating on the door on Dad's house.
You said Carol Marler was the one beating on the door?
Yes. She's the one that told my mom Jim Wade was hurt and went to the hospital. That she needed to get there as soon as possible.
In episode 4, Tom Anderson talked about someone getting into a car, and that was Scott getting into Patty's car to get the bat before he chased David down with it.
You're hitting somebody. I seen Dave down crouched over like that, and he got back up, and then they all went over by this one car. I don't know whose car it was. But it was dark, and it was by the parking lot. They went over by the car, and that's when they might have been going around the car to go down the street. They were by the car, and that's when I seen them run down the street. And I didn't follow them all the way down the street. Then after a while, I went down, and I didn't go no further after. I just saw them laying there, and that's all I seen.
In episode 7, David Brian White talks about how his attorney told him the names of the people who were chasing him.
My attorney told me that Dan Bullock, the sheriff's aunt and uncle's house was right there, and they seen this guy that left from the scene and went underneath the street light and went up on Wesley Marler's porch. I don't know if Wesley Marler's tall, short, or whatever, but that's really all I know. I've been pretty much kept in the dark on everything. It just seems like that's how everybody wants it. Just keep me in the dark and give me the blame. It's easier for them that way, I guess.
Had you ever met Jimmie? Ever?
Never in life.
Did you, after seeing a photo of him, did you see him that night at all?
No.
You did not see him at all. So
that's when I stood up in the courtroom. I stood up in the courtroom in my preliminary hearing, and I turned around. I'm assuming it was family members of Jimmie's, and I turned around and I told them, that is not the man I hit. And my attorney told me.
In episode 8, Peggy talked about witnessing Wesley and Jimmie Wade in an argument in the Coal Bin Tavern.
But that night, him and Wesley was arguing in the bar. I went in the bar just for a minute to say hi to my sister and was going to stay, but Jimmie and Wesley started arguing, and I didn't want to be there when the cops came.
Right.
So I left. So before I left, Jimmie and Wesley was arguing to where it was about to be a fight.
Also, in episode 8, Shane Hill told us who had beat him up that night.
Who did you get in a fight with that night?
Wasn't much of a fight to some bitches. Wesley and his brother-in-law. I don't know what his brother-in-law's name was. He's a long-haired guy with
Wesley.
Blonde hair, I think.
Wesley, you said?
Wesley Marler.
Wesley Marler.
Yep.
Why did they jump you?
I don't know exactly. Well, Wesley didn't like me anyway. We'd had an encounter before and nothing become of it. But this time, I guess he was going to, I don't know what he was had planned. He jumped me.
in the end, if Wesley did it, he's not going to be a threat to anybody when he's in jail.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't care after he's arrested.
Okay.
I just don't want him to come confronting me,
Yeah.
for something they put on there.
I understand.
I guess you could do it with if you don't use my name.
In episode 10, I confirmed that we think that it was 2 men involved with this murder. We've been careful to say person or persons throughout this podcast, but I'll be frank with you now. We do think that 2 people are involved, and maybe they feel responsible for each other, or not. Maybe one of them feels guilt, feels remorse, but feels beholden to the other, or intimidated by the other. We know that threats have been made to witnesses. Why not threats to their co-murderer? Or maybe one of them has been hiding behind the other. Maybe the one who encouraged whispered to the one who did it that they better not talk. Or maybe one has talked and the other doesn't know it. Maybe he talked a lot. In episode 13, David told a story about a big man telling him how he and another man killed Jimmie Wade Martin.
That's when he started talking to Jesse and had made mention of this murder, that getting into a fight with somebody outside of the bar in Bonne Terre. And what stuck with me was the fact that he said he'd hit him with a 4x4. And at first, in my mind, I was thinking 4x4 like the vehicle. And then I realized he meant a board. And it just struck me as awkward because, if you've ever picked up a 4x4, you know how awkward that would be to swing at somebody. One more thing I wanted to mention, I do remember he was talking and it wasn't I or me. It was first person plural. It was we. We did this, we did that. So I got the distinct impression that there was another person with him when it happened.
This was Scott talking about him and Wesley killing Jimmie Wade. Also, in episode 13, Patty talked about her ex-boyfriend telling her that he and Wesley were going to kill Jimmie. And her ex-boyfriend was Scott Kennan.
Who is Wesley Marler?
That is Scotty's brother-in-law. And Scotty's sister's husband.
So what all do you remember about that night on October 13th? The night that my dad was murdered.
Well, I remember that evening. Marilyn lived on right across the street from 12C Street where Carol and Wesley lived. And Scotty came over there and told me that we was going to the bar to party. I said, oh, okay. And then about an hour later, we left, and it was just a block away. And then on the way down there, Scotty said, well, if Jimmy's down there tonight, said, we can't party with him no more, so the next time that me and Wesley's around, we're going to kill him. I was like, what? What are you talking about? And I'm just not going into it. Just forget it. Because we was there at the bar then.
If you've been listening since the beginning, you know that we have not named names until now. We have been so careful not wanting to interfere with the legal process. It's been very hard to be patient, very hard to wait and have faith in the justice system. It's been almost 35 years since Jimmie's murder. In the beginning, the Martin family all thought that David Brian White did kill Jimmie Wade and that the system had just let them down in releasing him. But it was worse than that. David Brian White didn't kill Jimmie, and he spent 3 years in jail while the trial was postponed again and again, and then finally the case was dismissed 3 days before the trial. The prosecuting attorney at the time said the case, quote, hasn't ended by any stretch of the imagination, end quote, and yet nothing was done. Jeannie, Jimmie Wade Martin's sister, worked in those intervening years to find out exactly what happened and then had to stop for what it was doing to her and her family. When the twins were of high school age, someone approached them and told them that they had reason to believe that it was Wesley. But they were still kids. What could they do? What were they to believe? 8 years after his murder, having never recovered from his death, Jimmie Wade's mother passed away at 58. Later, when the twins tried to get answers and were told that nothing could be done, they started the investigation themselves. They reached out to law enforcement in 2007 with their findings, but the case was not reopened. They uncovered a lot of evidence. In 2020, we started this podcast. More evidence was uncovered. People came forward. In 2021, Donnie Crump from the Missouri State Highway Patrol agreed to look into the case. More people came forward. And here we are, an arrest. 4 years after the podcast started, 17 years after the twins reached out to the police for the first time, and 35 years after the murder. Finally, those of us here at Small Town Forgotten, Sean, Ashton, Vanessa, and I, have talked about how we feel. We produced a podcast to get attention for a cold case of a murder that happened decades ago. We wanted to help. We had no idea if it would work, and it did work. Combined with everything the twins had done and continued to do, the connections that were made, and the relationships that were leaned on, it worked. We feel good. But the feeling isn't quite happiness. Maybe relief. This was the goal, after all, and hard won. But we are all aware, even the twins, that it is the reverse for Wesley's family. You heard the twins say that they will pray for them. We take no pleasure from the pain that it will cause them. But we know it is not our pursuit for justice that caused this. Wesley caused this. It was his actions that caused the pain they are feeling now. We know that the right thing to do is almost always the hard thing to do. Our hope is that Wesley confesses, tells the truth of what happened that night, and expresses regret. Now, it's out of our hands. The trial will happen and the verdict will be given. The twins have done all that they can do for this case. Their labor has finally come to a close. Diane, the Martin family, the twins, they can grieve now. This is why the emotion is not happiness. Now that the goal has been achieved, the twins can simply grieve at the loss of their father. They can have peace. Next time on Small Town Forgotten, the twins go to the arraignment hearing.
Wesley's in that van right there.
Small Town Forgotten is presented by BlueBurnProductions, writer and executive producer Vanessa Martin, creative and executive producer Ashton Hulsey, director and executive producer Sean Lee Martin, and myself. Small Town Forgotten is produced in association with Vagrant Media Productions, Brett Wiley, Jake Delaloy, Caleb Cook. Podcast distribution and digital strategy by Logan Janis with Kerrigan Ventures. Original music written and performed by Todd Hulsey. For more information, please visit smalltownforgotten.com. Please like, follow, and subscribe on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Special thanks to the twins, Andrea and Angela, for their perseverance. I'm your host, Chris Hulsey. Thanks for listening to Small Town Forgotten.